So, morning everyone, and welcome to our autumn tender webinar. So we're going to give you a brief reminder and brief overview of flexibility and our journey with flexibility, and then Guy's going to take you into some detail on the tender specific. Or sorry, Ellen's going to give you a brief detail on the tender specifics. Guy's going to give you a brief overview of some other details and some of the activities of where we'd like to go and develop over the next year or so in the space of flexibility. So just a very quick reminder of who we are. So we are SP Energy Networks, and we are the DNO that covers both SP distribution and SP ManWeb, so south of Scotland, North Wales, and Liverpool. We've also got the transmission license for the transmission operator license for SP transmission in the south of Scotland. So that's who we are. We've also got our partners on board for this called Piccolo, who are running our tender process, and Guy will brief you on some other interesting information and developments that we're working on with Piccolo over the coming months. So do you want to go to the next slide, please, Ellen? So just as a way of a reminder of where we've been and the importance of flexibility for Spen. So I think if we look back a few years, we hadn't really explored flexibility at all. There's a lot of challenge both internally, externally, and by a regulator on looking at just looking at conventional reinforcement and where was our test, where was our assessment of alternative options and alternative solutions in comparison to conventional reinforcement. So back in 2020, we ran our first tender to see what could we actually get from providers, what could we procure, what could we sign providers up to, and how could that factor into our reinforcement requirements, looking at alternative solutions to traditional reinforcement. So that kind of grew over the next year and a half, 18 months, and that ended up building into our RIIO-ED1, which is our RIIO-ED2, sorry, which is our price control, which governs everything from what we're allowed to spend and our returns. And we looked at our entire network out to 2028, which is the end of the price control period, with our system design team. And they looked at every half-hourly period at all points in the network to try and identify where flexibility could provide a potential solution as an alternative to conventional reinforcement. So that resulted in our largest tender, seeking 1.4 gigawatts across 1,500 locations, and we accepted bids to the tune of 555 megawatts across that period. So that was a large tender. It was quite far out into the future in terms of what we were seeking. We were pretty much open to anyone to come forward, provided they could technically provide a service, and that include both live and planned assets. Following that, we re-tendered in autumn 2021, and we were really seeking to kind of shore up any gaps we had in our longer term or kind of medium to long term requirements. We were a bit disappointed in the response. We didn't get a lot of megawatts back, so we took a bit of a step back to try and understand what were the barriers for providers to take part in this, which resulted in an external report from Oxera that they've produced. At the same time, we've also seen reports from Ofgem looking at some of the barriers to participation in distribution flexibility. So we've kind of taken that aboard, tried to understand what some of the barriers are, what we can do as an organisation to try and drive participation and flexibility. So I think events like this, the webinar, further stakeholder engagement. We've also had Ellen on the team looking at who's physically connected to our network and could be a potential participant, and tried to engage and try to bring them into the process of tendering. So I think there's a few, and then from an Ofgem side, they're looking at systems, processes, governance about some of the barriers. But I think for me, it's more fundamental than that. It's really down to engagement, who's out there, who could participate, how do we get dialogue with yourselves to understand what you could do and what we need. And I think there's some challenges out there about price. My current bugbear at the moment is the last barrier is probably interactions and coordination with other markets. And I think it's an onus on industry and Ofgem to try and make it as streamlined as possible for providers to participate in multiple service markets where they can be provided concurrently, or where they can stack with each other. So that's a bit of a summary of what we've been, where we've been. And I'll maybe pass on now to go into a bit more detail about our current tender, which is live as of October.
So hello everyone, I'm Ellen. I'm the Flexibility Procurement Lead Commercial Analyst in the SpendFlex team. So I'm going to take you through our requirements for the autumn tender this morning, as well as take you through some key dates and processes for you to be aware of. So firstly, here's a summary of our requirements for the autumn tender. We are procuring for services across our 2 distribution licence areas. For SP distribution, we're procuring 224 megawatts across 299 locations. And for our Manweb area, we'll be procuring 76 megawatts across 276 locations in total. So we are procuring at all voltage levels. We're also procuring under the same product names as the spring tender. For those of you who are new to our flexibility products, we have 5 products that we're procuring for in total. Sustain and Secure, those are our pre-fault services, and Sustain is scheduled in advance to support security of supply during system intact conditions. And that payment structure is a utilisation fee only model. For Secure, that's used to manage peak demand loading on the network and reduce network loading. And that payment consists of an availability fee, which is credited when the service is scheduled, and then a further utilisation payment when you deliver the service. For Dynamic, that's a post-fault service, and that's used to support the network in the event of specific fault conditions. The availability signal is sent a week ahead, and by accepting an availability fee, you're then expected to be ready to respond to utilisation calls within 15 minutes, and you get both an availability and utilisation fee for that service. So Restore is a restoration service to help with restoration following a rare fault condition. As the requirement for this is unpredictable, Restore is based on a premium utilisation only service. We don't pay any arming or availability fees for this. And if you declare yourselves available for the Restore service, you'll be expected to respond to utilisation calls within 15 minutes. And finally, the reactive product, that's just to provide reactive power to support voltage on the network. There is an arming fee available for this, which is week ahead, and the dispatch signal will be scheduled in advance as well. There's more information on these on our website and ITT documents. And you'll notice from the table on this slide that most of the megawatts that we're procuring for currently are within the Sustain and Secure bracket, which are both pre-fault flex products. And we can send these slides out to you so you can have a more detailed look at this table in your own time. And then our service windows for our autumn tender will run from April 24 until November 25. There's multiple service windows available through a number of these products, so you can apply for just a single one or participate in multiple windows. So there is a concise list available of the service windows for each location on the Peaklow Flex platform, and you may need to create an account if you've not created one already. So Peaklow are able to help you with this should you need it, and we'll display the link for that website for you in the final slide of this pack. So can I get the next slide, please? So I'm going to take you through the tender process briefly, and there's some key dates here you might want to be aware of. The timeline is also on our ITC documents on the Peaklow website as well, if you want to have a look later on. We launched the tender on the 30th of October, so all the documents are already live for you to take a look at. We are currently in the pre-qualification stage, and the deadline for pre-qualification is the 8th of December. So during this stage, we will ask you to fill in our pre-qualification questionnaire and register all the assets ready to qualify for the next stage. Will be our bidding window, and this is all done on the Peclo Flex platform as well. So after pre-qualification closes, we will then open our bidding window, where providers will be required to submit their commercial bid for the autumn tender, and this opens on the 11th, and then the deadline is on the 15th of December, and that's also done via the Peclo platform. After all the bids are submitted, we'll then evaluate all the bids that we've received as part of our optioneering assessment, where we'll essentially evaluate all the competent bids against all of the options to make sure that we are using the most economic and efficient solution to manage grid flexibility. You'll then expect to hear the outcome of your bid on the 5th of February, and it's on this date that the contracts are issued. And we will be using the bilateral common contract that we used in the spring tender, but going forward, we are developing a framework agreement as part of the Open Networks project run by the ENA, and that's to standardise procurement processes across all DNOs. This won't be ready until next year. So we will then be seeking views from providers after the framework agreement is finalised to move over to this framework contract. So in terms of bidding rules, that's the same as a last spring tender. In terms of your bids, you are able to offer us capacity at a simple single price, or you can also split the megawatt capacity that you have available into smaller volumes at different prices as well. For the service windows for the entire tender competitions run from April 24 to November 25. Some windows are a bit shorter for some competitions. So we do ask you to be able to provide us with flex services within that whole window for each competition. For the service duration, you may have a situation where your assets won't be able to run for the entire service duration that we initially asked for. That's fine. However, we do ask you to meet our minimum duration, which is around 30 minutes. You can find in our supporting documents the estimated availability and utilisation hours for the entire service windows for each location, which may help you determine what's expected in terms of service durations across the whole service windows. And service periods, so some competitions may not run for the entire window from April 24 to November 25. You are able to submit bids for individual years as well. So if a competition runs for the entire service window, you can submit separate bids for individual years. So for the status of your assets, we do consider bids from providers who own and operate assets that are already connected to the network. We accept bids from assets in development or planned, and from those who will recruit assets to meet our requirements. If your assets are currently in development, we do have a few extra pre-qualification questions, so you can find out a bit more about the development status of the asset, just to make sure they're compatible with our requirements. We also do accept bids from assets who are currently participating in other ancillary services markets, such as the balancing mechanism, capacity market, and other ESO services. However, we want to make it clear that you should check that there's no conflict between the contractual obligations set by us and the ones set in your other contracts when offering us a flex service. All the relevant links to the Peclo platform and to our ITT documents will be on the final slide of this pack, and Peclo are also on hand if you need any help to register or have any queries about the platform. So yeah, that's a summary of the autumn tender, and I will now hand you over to Guy.
Thanks, Ellen. So hi everyone, I'm Guy Shapland. I'm the Flexibility Performance Manager. I'm responsible for the operational side of Flex and implementation of our platform. So I just want to give you an update as to how we're going to start operating from next year, and an update in our systems as well. And hopefully, I think it's a really positive step forward for us. We've listened from feedback from our providers in previous years and made the changes to hopefully reduce the barriers and make the process a lot slicker. those of you who've used this in the past, obviously we use Piccolo to run our tenders and our procurement process. But then we've had to onboard you onto a separate platform called Flexible Power to manage the dispatch and settlement part of it. So the good news is now that we've signed a 2-year contract with Piccolo that enables us to manage the full end-to-end process using the one platform, which for us is a real positive step forward. But just to kind of take a step back from that, right at the beginning when we're defining our requirements, so that requirement stage is done by our system design engineers who are looking at the DFES models, the uptake of LCT technologies, the actual network needs. That still is happening, but what we're going to start doing as of next year is build all those requirements, that data, and put that into our open data hub. So you'll be able to get that full visibility of the actual requirement, the short-term requirement, but also the longer visibility, the longer view of the network need over the full ED2 period. So you'll be able to see that in the Open Data Hub, and you'll be able to have the ability to kind of talk to that hub via APIs as well. So you'll be able to extract that data. From that as well, obviously, I just said that we're signed up to Piccolo, so we'll be using that Open Data Hub to feed the Piccolo requirements. We've been running tenders now since 2019, and it's been the standard approach where I've been managing 2 tenders a year, 1 spring and 1 autumn for long-term flex to manage deferred reinforcement schemes. We're now looking at other use cases as well, and a big uptake for us recently this year is using Flex to support network outages, especially in our ManWeb region. So we have a number of contracts this year to manage those specific outages to provide additional security during that outage. So we're building that into our tender processes now. For us moving forward, the running 2 tenders a year has served a purpose, but actually we're thinking now that we're going to move to a new operating model where we're running more regular tender cycles. So whether that's monthly, month-ahead tenders, weekend tenders, and potentially intraday trading. So this is a new model that we're working on now, and we're looking to implement from April next year. So regular tender cycles using operational assets that connect onto the network. Hopefully the volumes will be relatively small to start with, but will increase, and we're hoping that's going to increase liquidity and confidence in the market by having regular tender cycles for actual network need. And then the positive step here is that because all your data you're already registered within Piccolo, all your assets are in there, your bidding's done through Piccolo, so whether that's a month ahead or day ahead trade, as soon as we accept your bids, that is going to send an automated dispatch signal to you via an API. So we can do all that monitoring, all that dispatching through the single platform, and also the settlement as well. So for us, having that streamlined process is a real step forward for us and a positive step forward. Piccolo provide a lot of support as well, so they're on hand to help you set up your APIs to make sure that you're ready to take part in these new markets moving forward. So that for us is good news. Also, an update on open networks as well. Ellen mentioned before the framework or overarching agreements. For us, we were quite keen to implement that this year, but we don't want to really confuse the market. So as of April next year, we're going to go with one full implementation of the framework agreements. That's going to be version 3 of the agreement. There's going to be the implementation of the new Flex products that have been developed by Open Networks as well. So that's a standardized list of new products that's been developed that'll be implemented from April next year as well. So there's a lot of work to do, but as far as we're concerned, we've now got the tools in place, the platform in place for us to manage a full end-to-end slick process. And as of April next year, we will then start implementing the new outputs from Open Networks and then start operating in a new way, which in our view will help increase liquidity and confidence in the market. So if you have any questions on this, please feel free to drop me a note. I can take you through that in more detail. There's lots of support online, so you'll be able to find all the information on our tenders on the Piccolo Energy webpage. The link is there on this slide. to take part in the competition, to see our service windows, you can go to pickloflex.com, or you can reach out to us using the email address at flexibility@spngnetworks.co.uk. So I appreciate it's probably a lot of information there, but if you're like a one-to-one with us and Spen, more than happy to take you through our new operating model and our new way of thinking. If you want help with Picklo, please reach out to Picklo team. We'd be more than happy to hold your hand and take you through, give you a demo of their platform as well. So that's a brief overview of how we plan to operate next year. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat now and spend the next few minutes just trying to go through your questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Guy. Now that's great to run through. I think just one thing to add, Guy, onto the kind of the moving to shorter term markets. What we have also discussed alongside that is that we need to have some sort of longer term market signaling as well. So although the markets might move to shorter term, we will still be seeking to provide long-term visibility of what we might need in order for for people to start to recruit or to anticipate that they could participate in future requirements. So that will come alongside shorter markets. I was just going to pick up quickly. There was a question from Lauren on assets where they've been consented to provide flexibility or to deliver flexibility. I don't know if we've done this specifically for kind of I&C customers, but in theory, it's no different from what aggregators are doing effectively. They're acting on the behalf of, of domestic customers to provide a flexibility service. I suppose what we just maybe need it may be worth a quick bilateral to discuss what that looks like, and if there's any additional, authorization that we need to see that, you have authorization to utilize your client's assets to provide flexibility.
We don't ask for exclusivity either. So our contracts don't have an exclusivity clause. So you're more, if we contract with you, you can take part in other markets. We're not exclusive. So that will give you the option to take part in the DNO Flex market as well as the ESO or other markets out there.
And thanks, Guy. And the other question we had was from Brian, just asking. I replied quickly just in case you dropped off the call, but I think that if you can remind us of the lower limit of participation, but I suppose there's also the element of if it's below our lower limit of participation, if you register on Picklo's site, that will still leave you as registered as a potential provider, and there's an alternative route of participation through an aggregator, through your supplier acting as an aggregator.
Yeah, so the limit, so 11 kV, the lower limit to participate is 50 kilowatts, and then for LV it's 10 kilowatts.
So I think that suggests, Brian, that you could participate if you look through the website again. If you would like to to contact us directly or to seek further clarification, please do so. There's links on the slide there as well. I think there's one more question now from Monica. I think I'm just trying to get my head around this one, guys. So when the voltage limit is 11 kV, would you consider assets connected at 33 kV at all? I suppose if there's assets connected at 33 kV, I would probably look for them to participate in the 33 kV issues that we have, because that's where they could create a direct impact to provide for flexibility provision. Anything to add to that one, Guy?
I suppose it depends on the location of that 11 kV in relation to the primary substation, doesn't it? So see the 11 kV is there to manage that 11 kV constraint. We need to look at that, Monica. You've sent us your assets there, so we'll take that away and have a look at that and get back to you.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left if there's any more questions. I'll give it one more minute, and then if not, I'll close the call.
So do you mean is that virtual power plant? Brian.
So I suppose, Brian, that we don't really have a preferred kind of a preferred provider. I think that the purpose of this is to try and be kind of transparent, and that it's an open tender. So we work with a range of providers, but we don't necessarily state a preference, and it's not our place to do so, because that's kind of market warping. So that we've worked with, we've got SP Retail's on the call. We've got Octopus Energy. We've worked with extensively. We've got Ome Energy. We've worked with. So we've worked with a range of suppliers, but I can't in this call point to say one of them is preferred over others. So I'll when it comes to DERMS/A&M, so I've been involved with A&M quite significantly over the last few years. So absolutely, A&M falls within our plans to balance supply and demand. I think one of the areas we're looking at is, for me, A&M/DERMS as a control system. That doesn't preclude or doesn't specify that there is a commercial mechanism at the front of that. So we are working with the ESO, with others, to look at how we can use DERMS to actually facilitate flexibility, or for people who are connected under DERMS systems to provide flexibility. And I think it's always a difficult software and engineering challenge, but I think from a basic principle, all we're effectively trying to do is work with the ESO to say, look, if you have dispatched something, or if we dispatch something, the DERMS kind of set points can be adjusted such that there's not a unintended consequence when it comes to supply and demand balancing, either for ourselves or for the ESO. Okay, so we're just about out of time. So I'd just like to thank everyone for joining the call. I'd like to thank my colleagues for presenting, and the team at Piccolo for all your support running our tenders and in setting up the webinar. Again, just to reiterate, there's plenty of links there. If there's any questions or follow-ups that anyone has, please let us know. We're keen to understand any barriers you have, any challenges you have. And for us, really the test and the proof and flexibility is participation, and getting customers like yourselves to participate and support network balancing needs. Okay, thank you everyone, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye-bye.